The Royal Birthday Party, written by Aviva, copyrighted solely to Aviva, brought to you by String of Light Publishing and Aviva Enterprise. Once upon a time there was a queen. This queen was very, very special, and she was very, very beautiful, especially for her age. Now the queen was in her garden one day, serenely sitting there all alone, and even though one could hear the sounds of life in the kingdom, for the queen it was a moment that was so serene that the trees did not dare to even whisper. It was a moment that was so serene the queen could hear the sunbeams singing, and all else around her was quiet and calm. Then 2 knights approached without being announced at all, and here of course you ask, who are these 2 knights who dare approach our queen while she is sitting alone in a serene moment? Well, I will tell you. It is obvious if you are fortunate enough to know our history. These 2 are none other than the Knights of the Golden Heart. These 2 are also privileged to be the queen's own sons, and therefore they were at first, and naturally still are, princes. And so now you ask, why were such young princes made knights? The Golden Heart is a knightly order the queen created just for the 2 young princes after they showed exceptional valor and rescued their queen mother at her very own royal birthday celebration. Now you ask, what on earth could have been so horrible at the queen's own birthday celebration? Well, to answer that question, I must tell you about the party from last year. It was a wonderful party, a special party, a truly royal party fit for a queen. Everyone, positively everyone, had been invited, and everyone, positively everyone, came, so it was a perfect moment. I am sure you can imagine everything. Surely you can imagine the guests' fancy clothes, the fragrance of jasmine and roses in our queen's garden, and even the tiny, tiny lanterns with dancing light inside hanging from each willow tree. Yes, indeed, it was the perfect moment. And while everyone was gay and wishing our queen happy birthday, the royal birthday cake arrived. I am certain you can imagine the cake. It was big and beautiful, trimmed on every edge with little flowers made of cinnamon and sugar paste, with just a hint of vanilla and coriander for flavor. Looking at that cake made one's mouth water, but of course, all polite guests wait to be served. The hundreds and hundreds of guests parted to the right and to the left, so that the royal baker could present our queen her cake. The 2 princes were his escort, and they were followed by a sheep-drawn carriage upon which an 18-tier cake rode in transport. The royal baker stopped, the princes stopped, the sheep stopped, and so the cake stopped just in front of the queen. The folding steps of the carriage were lowered onto the velvety green spring lawn of our queen's garden, and the 2 princes were about to serve the first piece of cake to their dear mother when suddenly one of the guests began to behave quite strange. He had pushed his way up to the royal carriage, and all the while his eyes became smaller and smaller. At the same time, his mouth grew larger and larger. Finally, his eyes had all but disappeared, and hence he was becoming blind. In the meantime, his mouth had grown as large as his entire face, and hence he was revealing his true self. And what a sad true self it was, to be sure. At least all the polite guests were sad and crying. They were crying for this guest who had allowed himself to become so very, very ugly. They were crying for the queen, and they were crying for the spoiled royal birthday party. And you can believe me word for word when I tell you what happened next. The guest that forgot his manners began shouting, "Out of the way! It's mine, all mine!" And he promptly gobbled up all of the queen's birthday cake. Our dear queen was so close to that cake that for a split second she was in danger of being swallowed alive. for the impolite guest had become entirely blind now, for thinking only of himself and his wishes for all of our queen's cake. Thank goodness the young princes stayed alert and whisked their queen mother out of harm's way with not a single moment wasted. Who would have guessed that anyone invited could behave so poorly? To be sure, there was an official royal investigation. It became known that the offensive guest was from another garden altogether. To be sure, in his garden, to all of its citizens' sorrow, the memory of birthdays was forbidden, and cakes of any sort were entirely outlawed, regardless of the occasion. And somehow, on being in the proximity of such a grand sugary confection, the unfortunate fellow simply could not help himself. So now you know what happened at our queen's last birthday party, and this revelation of our history brings us to the present moment. At this present moment, our two young knights of the Golden Heart have come to the queen to discuss a difference of opinion they each have about the upcoming royal birthday party. They have been in a long discussion for days. Yes, days. You see, Prince Wisdom thought it best to invite the ill-mannered guest from last year for the sake of peace. However, Prince Peace thought that the same ill-mannered guest should be stricken from the royal guest list for the sake of wisdom. And one might say, after looking at our entire history, that both knights are correct. In fact, that is exactly what our dear queen seems to be thinking. You are both correct. Let's see. Now, with one prince on the queen's right and with one prince on the queen's left, they are walking arm in arm. The knights of the Golden Heart are each whispering, and their queen mother is listening intently. In fact, I can see a twinkle coming to both her eyes, and she is nodding her pretty head. Yes, Prince Wisdom, you are correct. Yes, Prince Peace, you are correct. So here is what we will do for the sake of wise peace. So here is what we will do for the sake of peaceful wisdom. This year we will have 2 birthday parties. The first royal party will be for that unfortunate fellow who is a citizen of a garden that denies him the pleasure of parties and cakes. Then we will have a second royal birthday celebration for all of the other guests who love to share. And just now, I see, they are all 3 nodding in serene agreement. Prince Wisdom, our Queen, and Prince Peace. And even if I do say so myself, I think they are absolutely right. After all, what could be more special than having 2 birthdays with 2 birthday cakes and 2 birthday parties in the Queen's garden in the same year? Quiet. I just heard them all say in union that the only thing that could possibly be better is an everlasting peaceful wisdom and an everlasting wise peace. Shh! Now, who is that who just asked our Queen's age? To that question I can only reply, didn't your mother teach you that ladies never ask and ladies never tell? However, some of us have heard the rumor that this year someone in our Queen's garden will be just a few hundred years short of being 6,000. Oh my, and she is so beautiful. Still,